Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, artists and creatives of all ages, to NAB NYC 2023. Try and say that 3 times fast, everyone. We're here with amazing artists from around the world and many local, showcasing Cinema 4D and all of Maxon 1's products. And we have a very special guest kicking it off, Harrison Vincent, and he's going to be showcasing not only cinema, but the Substance workflow. And the nice thing about it is there's a special going on right now, so check out maxon.net, and you can check out that special bundle of Substance and Maxon 1. And let's give a big round of applause for Harrison Vincent.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thanks for having me here at the Maxon booth today to talk about some computers and some software and show off some cool stuff. My name is Harrison Vincent. I am a 3D director, designer, and animator. I'll start off by telling you guys just like a little bit about myself and kind of my journey into 3D. I was a failed engineering student turned graphic designer. I was all in everything engineering. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to crush it. Until I realized it's really hard. There's a lot of math. I wasn't super into that, so I pivoted to graphic design and tried to figure out a way that I could still use the 3D programs that I liked. I was in graphic design. What I was making was not great. And then I found motion design, and that's kind of when it all changed for me. I started using After Effects for a couple years, and then I started to want to think about how could I integrate 3D into my workflow and start stepping stuff up. So cinema was kind of the least scary option at the time. It didn't have a steep learning curve like a lot of the other programs, and it had a really similar animation language to After Effects, and that was comforting to me as a young creative. So I could keep working in After Effects, and if I was feeling a little spicy, I could dip over and use Cinema for a bit. And that was about 12 years ago. I've been using Cinema 4D for over a decade now, and I definitely consider myself a generalist in a lot of ways, but there's definitely areas of focus that I gravitate towards as a CG artist. So I'll go ahead and share a couple of those now for you guys. Particles. I like particles. I like animals. I like simulations. I like realism. I really try to push that in a lot of my work recently. Storytelling, design, and animation. And what all these have in common is they were all created in Cinema 4D and rendered in Redshift. For the past 7 or 8 years, I've been concentrating predominantly on just 3D design in my professional workflow. So enough talking about it. I'll go ahead and show a quick reel of some of the work that I enjoy creating. Oh, I'll try to be seamless here. Right on. Some fun stuff going on there. All right, so I like 3D. That was probably like a 50-50 blend of client work and personal work. That leads me to another thing that I like. I like personal projects. I like them a whole lot. It's definitely been a part of my process as a designer, and it kind of reminds me that like no matter like how long I'm in this industry, like I'll always be a student, and there's always a lot to learn and grow from. So do them if you get the chance. It'll help your growth as an artist. I know it pushes me to learn new software and new techniques. It helps you define your style and stand out as an artist. It's a very competitive industry. And it starts to curate the client work that you receive as well. So this process definitely helps that happen. And that leads me to my latest personal project, which is a short film called Awake. It was completed over the first 8 months of this year, kind of in between life and client gigs and all that kind of stuff. And it was a huge collaboration with a longtime friend, Matthew Morris, who creates work under the moniker 8-Bit Ghost, and he handled all of the score and sound design. So I'm going to play that for you guys today. Hope you enjoy. It's a full CG short film and utilized a lot of Maxon products.
Awake, I find myself wanting to dream. That one day I will awake. Before me is a journey, not of my choosing. I fear myself is an illusion, chasing my own shadow. How long have I been here? Have I just arrived? My movements are a memory. I do not remember. The pursuit is a dream. I cannot forget.
I am awake.
Thank you. That was very ambitious of a personal project, but they don't all have to be that way. I think as long as you use them as a vehicle for your own creative growth as an artist, it's going to be a great use of time. I'm going to play one more quick little video, and then I promise we'll get into some stuff. And this is like a little process video of kind of everything that went into creating a CG short of this size. A little bit of what we're going to be talking about today. Yeah, so lots going on there, a lot of software, a lot of different workflows being represented, but I think it's important to note that kind of the cornerstone of that pipeline is Maxon. The character was created in ZBrush, animated in Cinema 4D, and rendered in Redshift. The shot that got the most questions was this shot right here. So today we're going to be creating this asset right here, specifically this face model, this kind of like sci-fi break apart. We're going to be creating it from a photo scan. We're going to be modifying the geometry to break it apart into these kind of like sci-fi panels, kind of like a little like Westworld effect. We're going to be using that geometry to influence our design choices in Substance Painter. And then we're going to be jumping back into Cinema for some animation techniques. And then we're going to be showing a little bit of how we can use AI in another program to animate our character talking. And then we're going to assemble it all together in Cinema 4D for the final shot. So knowing these constraints beforehand definitely will aid us in our design process as we go forward. Okay, so step one, reference. Super important. It's great to kind of like get the general vibe for what you're going to be creating. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of the design process and get there a lot sooner. You can definitely see there's a lot of influence from some of these selects in the final design that we have here. Step two, photo scans. It would take me approximately 1 million years to like get this kind of realism from scratch. And now like I don't even have to try. I can rather take my time and focus on design and animation and storytelling, skills that I would like to develop. And I can start at a level of realism with one of these 3D photo scans from 3D Scan Store. They're not paying me to plug their product today, by the way. So the next step, not everything has to be created from scratch in order to achieve your vision. It took me a long time to kind of realize this as a 3D artist, and probably even longer to put it into practice, but why not use amazing assets to help you tell your story? Cool, so let's get started on some design. We're going to pop over to Cinema here. So this is kind of what the asset looks like when you bring it into Cinema. It's probably going to be scaled down by a factor of 10 or 100 or something like that. You know, we can thank the metric system for that, but we'll just throw it in a null, scale it all up, and we'll take our head mesh. We don't need any of these eyes or teeth or anything like that. We can add those later. And what we're going to do with our head mesh is we're going to hop over to Substance Painter super quick. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time in here. We're just going to use Substance Painter to kind of quickly mock out kind of a quick roadmap for like how these different panels are going to be arranged on the face. Let's grab. This keyboard's wacky. All right, so we have symmetry enabled, and we can see that by the axis on the face. So if we paint anywhere, it's going to paint on the other side, which is super convenient because our design is definitely going to be symmetrical. Let's change our color to black and make a brush size of 0.5 should just about do it. And that's super weird. I got a cursor up there. Okay. So if we hold down Shift and we mouse over our design and we make a little brush stroke and we hold down Shift, we can quickly just kind of like block out some of the edges here. And this is going to be kind of like a great prototyping workflow for just kind of figuring out where our breaks are going to be before we go back into Cinema and start fracturing our geometry. Obviously, you would spend a little bit more time doing it than I am today because I'm doing it live. So you think about maybe kind of what is my kind of visual language that I'm working with and how many panels do I want and how are they going to look and all that kind of fun stuff. But we'll just kind of quickly knock something together. Maybe this lip kind of breaks up down here. You guys get it. This is kind of the general vibe of it and pretty close to the kind of distribution of panels that we had on the end design. So I already have one prepared. Obviously, I spent a little bit more time kind of working on the angles and the facets and making something that I thought cool as an artist, you know. So we're going to take this. We've thrown it on our texture here. And step one, we need to use this as a roadmap to how we're going to fracture our photoscan object. So let's go into polygon mode here, and we can bring up our 4-panel view and hop down to the front view. And we're going to grab our rectangular selection tool, and we're going to hold down Shift so that we can select some polygons. And man, I nailed that first shot. That never happens. All right. So we're going to select the ones on the left side, and we're going to delete them. And they're gone. They're not gone forever. We're just doing this to save a little bit of time. We're going to take this object and throw it inside the symmetry object. So, and we can just go ahead and disable this show plane right here because we know it's where it's being reflected. Right down the middle. We're going to use this to essentially like automate the cuts on the left side of the face. So all we have to do is make the right side cuts, and the left side cuts will show up as well. Just so that we can see that a little bit better, let's do quick shading with lines. So we can come in here, and we can just kind of start moving through our object. And as you can see, I've already started to make a couple, just kind of following the roadmap of what we quickly sketched out in Substance Painter. So we can hit K on the keyboard to bring up our cuts, and hit K one more time to bring up line cut. And we can click, just kind of drag it across, and maybe this guy terminates up here at the top of this piece. And maybe we go down and make another one. And you want to make sure that you have visible only selected, otherwise you'll be making cuts like completely through your object, and you have a bunch of cuts on the backside. And I definitely found that out the hard way. So as you can see, I just made that cut right there, and it's being reflected over here on the left side. And that's exactly what we want. It's definitely going to save us some time, and it ensures that our asset that we're creating will be perfectly symmetrical. So what we're going to do now, we've already made all of our cuts here. We've gone through and kind of figured out a nice flow for how these panels are going to work. Let's right-click on our symmetry object and do Connect Objects and Delete, and that just kind of knocks it down into one editable object with all of our cuts intact. So that's definitely saved us some time by like automating cuts on the other side of our object. But we've created an issue. What is going on with our UVs here? This is not cool, man. We got half our UVs gone. But they're not really gone. They're kind of like duplicated up on the right side. And that's because the left side of our object is essentially the right side of our object just mirrored over when we collapse the symmetry object. And I used to be super scared of UVs as a 3D artist because I always thought, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to mess something up, and I'm not going to have a way to like figure it out, and I'm going to be stuck. But Cinema has an awesome UV edit workspace that kind of demystifies it a lot for me personally. So we can go ahead and let's just fix this live real quick. Let's go back to our standard view, and we'll go to our front view here, and we'll do the same thing where we'll just select the right side polys like we did before, right before we deleted them and got into this whole mess. And we'll go back to our UV editor, and with 2 clicks, like we can just fix this whole thing. So like mirror them over, and then we'll grab our position tool and we'll hold down Shift. We'll slide that bad boy right in the spot. Bam, we're set. And we have original UVs now. We have all of our cuts made on our mesh. So we can just close that guy down, and we don't have to mess with UVs anymore, which is awesome. We've already fixed those. All right, so the next step, now that we have our UVs fixed, we have a plan for all of our sci-fi cuts on our face. We're going to go through and make some selections on our model so we can split these out, and we have individual assets that we can animate later inside of Cinema 4D. So I've already made a couple just for kind of for the sake of time here. Basically, this is one cool thing. So I got all these guys selected for this little brow piece that we want to split off here so we can animate that doing something cool. But I don't want to go through and do the same selection on the left side. So because we're working with a symmetrical mesh, we can go up and choose Symmetrize Selection, and it just pops onto the other side. Now we can right-click that and go to Split, and it's its own object. And we can choose our rectangular selection tool, and just like that, right-click again, and it's its own object. We just mouse over and hit Delete over the viewport. Now we have 2 separate brow objects that we can animate. And basically, that's going to be kind of our workflow for how we're going to split all these panels off and then have full control later as we get that nested into our scene. All right, so now you'll have an object hierarchy that kind of looks like this. We'll go back into object mode, and we can start getting wacky with some of these shapes. So now that we have, so what do we have? We have a head object that we've split apart. We've designed all the different panels. So now what we want to do is use this new geometry to influence our design choices as we create the texture in Substance Painter. So we're going to select all these, save them out, open up Substance Painter. We don't need this guy anymore. We've already used that to influence how we're going to design stuff. I've brought in a diffuse map from the photo scan. This is just like a 1K, but it go all the way up to like 8K and come with like roughness maps with all these awesome channels and stuff that you can make super high-res art with. And before we start, let me just dock this guy. That's not crazy right there. Okay, so we'll go to, let's bake some mesh maps. And we only need one for today. You can bake normal maps from like high-res geometry, curvature maps that you can use to kind of mask out detail in separate areas. But for today, we're just going to generate a mesh ID and polygroup map. And what that's going to do is it's going to be like, hey, each one of these little face panels is a thing. And I want to create a puzzle map that shows that each one of these is a thing so that we can isolate them when we're texturing our object. So if we go up and select Mesh ID and Polygroup, and we hit Bake Selected Textures, bam, you can just see it popped up right there. And so now that's going to allow us to be able to just kind of quickly make selections and isolate panels when we're going through our texturing process. So let's make a new texture and add a black mask. And then we'll go down to add color selection. And now we can just use this eyedropper tool and just start, you know, just playing around with some ideas. Like maybe these top ones are kind of like a white kind of spacey acrylic kind of texture. And we got another texture that's like maybe kind of darker. And we'll add a black mask to hide it. And then we'll bring it back with something on that black mask, like another color selection. And we can just kind of start selecting some of these panels down here. And I love Substance Painter because inherently at its core, it's a pretty simple program. It works a lot like Photoshop in a lot of ways. So you got blend modes and all sorts of stuff you can stack up and get some awesome detail. Cool, so that's already starting to look kind of neat. You know, we've used our cuts to kind of like influence creating one texture that will be applied to all of them, so it's going to be easy to update. One other thing we can do that you kind of see in this kind of style of, you know, cyberpunky kind of futuristic art is they always kind of have these weird little indentions on the face that kind of like, you know, maybe it's like kind of cybernetics or, but basically it's just a nice little design nuance that we can add that's going to kind of show where these different little panels open up. So I've just added a new texture and added a black mask, and we can make sure that we have, let's make this brush size a little bit smaller. 0.5 should do it. And actually, one thing that I didn't add to the gold texture is we want to make sure, and this is really going to sell it, we just want to make sure to drop our height down a little bit. And then as we start painting on here, make sure we paint on our mask. We can just hold shift similarly and kind of start making like little notches. Let's actually, I wonder if we can turn our, is this going to break it? No, we're rocking in 4K now. Okay, so we can just kind of start clicking through, and obviously you spend a little bit more time on this and kind of figure out, you know, what my design language is going to be for like these little glyphs on the face. But it's like a nice little touch that you can add, and this is something that was added into the final design as we went through. And you can do it without a gold texture and just kind of paint, you know, a little separation for panels. Like maybe you're making a spaceship, or maybe you're making some other sort of like character art, or adding embellishments to clothing. It's just a kind of like a super quick and dirty little way to kind of start adding some detail. All right, one more thing that we can do, if you're making any sort of art that has a level of realism, you got to add a little real-world touch to it, and everything's got dirt on it in the future, so let's do a little dirt layer. Let's add another texture and crank that roughness way up, do like kind of like a desaturated brown. We can add a fill layer, and we'll just go down here to our asset panel and type in dirt. And Substance ships with a bunch of great kind of some procedural and some image-based assets. Let's pick a funky little dirt down here. Sure, that one works. Let's go up here and turn off our mesh wireframe so we can see kind of what we've made. And obviously, I don't know, we've been in this program, what, like 3 minutes, and we've made something that's starting to get somewhere. Let me go ahead and show you guys kind of the final design. Yeah, I mean, it's not super far off. Obviously, I spent a little bit longer kind of working on some of the elements in here and kind of like what this top thing is, but all of the techniques are the same. You know, it's painting in embellishments, painting in some edge wear and some grunge. Yeah, and then basically just using that puzzle mat that we created to isolate the color of our underlying photo scan. Awesome. So, now that we've jumped into Substance and designed our texture, we can apply it to our head mesh. And we go over here. And so what do we have now? We have a whole bunch of different objects that we can animate independently. We have a shared UV space that goes across all of them. And if we have generated a bespoke design inside of Substance Painter that is a reflection of the geometry choices that we created. So now that we have done all the design work on the outside, let's hop on the inside and figure out what these like wacky little futuristic sci-fi mechanics are going to look like. So let's hop over here. You know, I wish I could say that I had some grand design before I started, you know, designing the internal part of the head and stuff, but it really was like just playing around with Legos. Got some little kit bash things, threw some music on, and just felt, you know, started feeling creative. Cinema 4D is a creative program, so it should feel like a sandbox in a lot of ways. And I didn't make these objects. These were just from a kit bash pack. You know, some other talented artists made these awesome little machine parts. And, you know, you download like a pack of them off ArtStation or TurboSquid and kind of start blocking out something that, you know, you think might be interesting. You don't know if you're going to like it until you look at it. I knew that I kind of wanted to start bigger before I went smaller. So I think it's kind of important to, you know, block out your composition before you start adding little like wires and screws and all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, so maybe, you know, when we peer inside the head, maybe there's like this kind of big harness that's like the back of the cranium, and then you got these like little platforms that are kind of stacked in a way. We can even let's throw something in a symmetry object. Maybe this cool dude over here. Yeah, I mean, you can see within just like a couple minutes of kind of moving some of these shapes around that you're already getting something kind of visually interesting. And you're not locked down to a design either. You can scale stuff and rotate it and kind of find a little spot for it that's visually interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the basis for it. Let's go ahead and let's clear that out of there. I'll show you guys kind of the final design that we ended up settling on. And it looks super complicated, but at its core, it's really just kind of those shapes with a bunch of smaller shapes filling in some of the secondary details. I made like a little cage that goes around the inside. Those were just like some stacked cuts on some base geometry, and then threw that in a sweep NURB. I got some little like kind of wacky little typewriter keys in here that kind of, you know, accentuate some of the larger compositional choices. And then, yeah, there's just little screws and like kind of surface detail stuff. So start big, work smaller, and make something that you think is cool. That's the whole deal. All right, so now that we've kind of touched on some of the internal design, let's do some live animation. What could go wrong? Okay, so we got we've broken out all of the outside panels, so they're all their own object. They all can be animated. Let us start laying down some keyframes. So what we want to do is we want to start with a closed shape. The face is closed, and we want it to open up. So we have two different states. So let's start with the closed state. We're going to figure out what axis we want each piece to move on, and we'll set a keyframe. So it starts at 0, obviously, and then we'll open it up, and then we'll just kind of figure out. I've already added keyframes to the rest of these axes just to save a smidge of time. We'll have that guy rotate in. We'll have this guy rotate in. Maybe this guy will go out. This guy will also go out. Our whole kind of point of the shot is to clear the face. Like, we want the character has already said their lines in the short film, and we want to open up the face so that we can show some cool kind of like mechanical pieces, and then that lines up into a match cut for the final reveal as a little plot device. This looks like it's maybe like a little 2-axis move down here. So, I mean, as you can see, like, I didn't even put like hinges in here or anything like that. All the mechanics just kind of look complicated, but you know, no one's kind of hyper focusing on the details. So unlike engineering, like, it doesn't have to actually work. It just has to look rad, you know. So we'll just go full ventriloquist mode here. Pop that guy down. So as you can see, we already got some animation going on. The face is kind of doing its thing in a cool way. We have an issue. We have this kind of whole like nose bridge section. And that's like right smack dab in the middle of like what we want to clear out. So let's nest this inside, because we want these pieces to kind of like move with each other a little bit. So let's set a keyframe for rotation on the first piece and go forward 2 frames. We can hit G on the keyboard twice, and that just kind of goes forward. Let's cock this guy back a little bit. Let's set 2 positional keyframes there, because we want to. We'll slide this up. That's not what I want. Let's go back. It's because we had our enable axis tool set up here. So we set a keyframe for position. Let's go forward 2 keyframes. And bam, we'll just tuck that dude right there. And we'll go to our next piece and set a keyframe for rotation. And we would just want to rotate that back. And then let's set some position keyframes there too. So we got rotate, push, rotate. Rotate, push. That's the next move. And we'll just tuck this dude. So we're just kind of minimizing the shape of the nose here because we want it to kind of break away in this kind of like cascading, kind of like techie kind of mechanical movement. And then we'll just rotate this last piece. And you can see that it's like a parent-child relationship over here in the object manager. And we'll add a positional keyframe. So I guess the next thing is we just want to like tuck this whole assembly down, right? So let's hit W on the keyboard, and that kind of changes our axis to more of like a world axis instead of an object axis. And we can just slide this bad boy down. And what we're doing right now, and then we'll go forward 4 keyframes, because this is kind of a bigger move. Let's go to 22, and we'll push it back. Yeah, whenever you see like machinery and stuff kind of animated, it's stuff is never like A to B kind of motion, you know? It'll move along its axis like it's on like a little track, so maybe, you know, it slides down and then slides back and then finally clicks into like a little area right down here. So now we've opened up the whole face in this kind of cool, kind of sci-fi way. That's not what we want. Looks like it's interpreting. Oh, you know what? I know what I did. Let's delete that last keyframe. So we slide down, and then we're going to slide back, and then we're going to go forward. I just doubled up my keyframes there. And then we're going to slide down again. Yeah, that's better. See how our motion path here is reflected? All right, so slides up, slides back, slides down. So let's preview what we got. It's perfect. No, it's not perfect. It needs a little bit of finessing. So let's bring up our dope sheet, which is like our track manager. Let's find a way that is not absolutely insane to dock this in our viewport. And we'll go to show tracks, and we'll close all these little bad boys up so we got some space to kind of see what's going on. All right. So one thing that is kind of key in animation is like overlapping action. Whenever you have overlapping action, it makes things look a little bit more complicated and organic in real world. And it makes like your overall animation way less segmented. So we can just kind of start moving top to bottom and grabbing some of these animation panels and kind of offsetting them by 2 keyframes. We'll skip the nose stuff. We'll come back to that in a second. And we'll slide. So already that's starting to look like a little more complicated, right? But it's simple animation, just kind of offset. It's obviously way too fast, so we can just click summary up here, and that's just kind of all of our keyframes at once. We drag it out to the end of our keyframe, or end of our timeline. And you can see within, I don't know, how long have we been animating this face? 3 minutes? Like we're getting somewhere that's pretty close. Like we're kind of like, we've blocked it out, and now it's kind of time to start finessing some of these keyframes. So we can just switch over to our F curve. Man, that's fun. Oh, you know what? That's probably like a little bit of overshoot there. So what I just did is I took one of the Beziers, I drag it out just so that there's more easing on the ends of each move, and that just makes the kind of the motion curve a little bit steeper, like right in the middle of each move. Puts a little bit of extra stank on it, which is also pretty awesome when you're animating, and it's an easy thing to do to kind of get like a first quick look at it. And then you saw that like I had some wacky stuff going on in the viewport. That's because I had an overshoot, and that's basically when like the value of your animation curve goes over the end of either of its like value clamps. So I just hit 0 on the keyboard to kind of like just make all those tangents nice and tidy. Let's clear this. Hey, that's, I don't know if that's better or worse, but you know what? We're going to roll with it. So yeah, you can already see that like the motion is like a little more clicky, a little more mechanical, and that's definitely what we're going for. So that's some traditional keyframing techniques that were used for most of the things in this animation. Let me go over Let's get this guy out of here so we got like a little more room to work. So yeah, most of the stuff was just kind of traditionally keyframed. You know, you block it out real rough, and then you come back and finesse later until you have something that you're pretty cool with. This is kind of the animation for all of the internal components. So we have, you know, after the face opens and like does its thing and she says her lines, the pyramid in the head like sinks back and slides around, and we have this like wacky little rotary clock thing that's like a reflection of, I don't know, some sort of existential whatever, you know, plot device. And slides out, it lines up with the camera. Nice little match cut to the last shot. So all of that was traditionally animated. But, you know, one thing that adds like a little bit of spice to the scene is you see these little cool little keys back here. They're kind of like little typewriter keys that were added as a secondary element. And they definitely add a lot of life to the animation. And those were definitely not hand animated. That would take forever and be like, oh man, I would hate to have that as a task to hand animate. So let's clear out some of these. How am I doing on time? I think I'm doing all right. Some of these other components that were all hand animated. So we have our keys in here, and they're kind of dancing around in a cool little way, doing their thing. Let's take a look at how that was set up. So if we go into our texture tag, we'll just toss a quick little goose egg in this selection field, and that kills our texture for the time being. And we see that some are white and some are red, and that's because they're being driven by a procedural noise. So if we look in a fracture object over here, we have a whole bunch of little keys that were created for the design. I just kind of filled in what I thought was cool. Geometry could not be simpler. It was like a cube that was extruded like twice and then, you know, called it a day. Threw them in a fracture object. That way I can kind of still come over here and art direct where I want them, but then I can still take advantage of all of the awesome uses of the mograph module inside of Cinema 4D. So these are being driven by a shader effector. Let's go ahead and let's just rebuild this super quick. Nuke what's in there. Select our fracture object. Get a shader effector. You saw that they just increased in size. That's because scale is the default parameter for this effector. And let's just choose rotation. Let's give it a value of 6. That sounds cool. And then we need something to drive this parameter. So inside of the shading tab, inside of the shader effector, let's drop a procedural noise. Let's make it time dependent because we're going to animate it. Let's give it a contrast. So yeah, okay. So now we're starting to see that there's feedback on our little clones there, our little objects. Let's we can make this much more apparent. Let's go into parameter, and let's make a custom color just so it's there we go. So already we can see that it is having an effect, but our noise needs a little bit of work. It's way too big in our scene. These are like tiny little keys inside of the head, and they're not moving. So let's give it like a global scale of like 10. Let's give it an animation speed of 4, and let's click play. And yeah, we can already see that like this is kind of getting close. This could work for like, this could be like a stop motion-y kind of effect. You see how there's like no motion tweening between the two different states, and that could be cool. That could be like what you're going for. For this case, it's really not. I want like a little bit more easing in the motion, so we can back off our contrast a little bit, and you can see that they're kind of slowly rippling too. That's cool too. That's also kind of maybe not the best way to tackle this. So let's think about this for a second. Let us bring our contrast back up, and let's add a delay effector to it. And what that's going to do is that's going to keep the kind of like sharp contrasted motion of the effect that we liked, but it's going to add just like a little bit of easing on top. And it just kind of like, it's a nice little layer to kind of like finesse it, so we can see that they're still popping around, but it's not completely binary. It's not completely A to B. There's like a nice little motion in between. So if we bring our texture back, and all of our other components that we've just kind of quickly hand animated, and let's actually turn off. Let's go back to quick shading mode. We can see that that just adds a nice little bit of visual and animation complexity to the rest of our animation. And it's still live. We can hop in there at any point and kind of finesse those pieces as we see fit. Okay, so maybe if you've gotten to this point and you're thinking like, hey, you've created all this extra geometry, and let's take a look at the shot actually real quick. So, character walks up,
is a dream.
hits her head mask.
I cannot forget.
And then she's just like talking to the camera, and then it opens. And it's like, well, how are we gonna get all of that talking motion with all of that crazy geo going on there? And the best answer is we don't, because AI is super weird and no one knows how it works. So this is a program called Audio to Face. This was used to animate the face. Oh, looks like we got a soundtrack. I guess this was whatever I was listening to when I recorded it. We'll just go ahead and nuke that real quick. So this is called Audio to Face, and as the name might suggest, it allows you to take audio or your voiceover and make a face animation out of it. This is a screen cap of me just kind of goofing around in here, creating this asset. And it's a free program. It's part of the Omniverse suite from NVIDIA. And it allows you to essentially, so the green mesh on the left is like the default temp mesh, right? That's the one that's all rigged. That's the one that works perfect out of the box. This is our mesh. We loaded in the photo scan that we got, and we put our new texture on it. And because we fixed all the UVs and everything, our texture maps perfectly, and it has the suggestion of all this detail going on in the face. But really, it's like a super clean mesh with clean edge loops, and allows us to animate and articulate the face as we see fit. So let me just kind of rewind this a little bit. Over here on the left, we have, this is called correspondence points. So what we're doing is like we're selecting the edge of the eye on the left and the edge of the eye on the right, and just kind of making a field of similar facial features. And the more correspondence points you set, the higher resolution of your exported animation will be. So you just kind of go through, make your mesh, you click a solver, and through the power of witchcraft and AI, it creates like something super usable. So you can see up here on the right, I've loaded in my voiceover waveform, and then it just takes that, translates it into a super awesome kind of organic animation. I wonder if it plays at some point. Yeah, see, so it's starting to talk here. All these things over on the right are like emotion sliders that you can set keyframes for. So it's not just a simple lip sync animation. You can get a really nice performance by kind of like dialing in how you want your character to act. So that's pretty awesome. I figured this would take me like 3 days to figure out, and it was like super intuitive, and like within 30 minutes I had like an asset that I could use, and I was like, oh, it just saved me a whole bunch of time. So the great thing about Cinema 4D is, even though I'll hop out into other programs, Cinema 4D has always been my hub, and so I can bring that asset in as like an Olympic sequence, and I can offset it in my timeline and have it work with all of the other animation things that I'm creating. So let's take a look at the final face animation. So we can see we have our panels opening up here. I've added some kind of pose morph animation on the eyes. The eyes are kind of clicking around. They have like a line to target tag with like a vibrate tag on them that's kind of moving around. So it's really like nothing in here is like overly technical. It's just a bunch of like small detail-oriented baby steps that create a nice detailed final image. So really, you take your two different animation systems, you have your panels opening up, and that was one thing, and then we had all of our internal components, and you just put them on the same timeline, and you kind of say like, all right, well, these cheeks open at this point, and that allows space for this thing to slide out. So it's really just kind of grooving with that and making kind of temporal space for all of it on your timeline. So let's take a look at the final shot. So we have our character walk up, touch the helmet, the head opens, says a couple lines of EO, and then it just disappears. What's going on there? So this is the asset that we exported from Audio to Face. It exports with UVs. It's an Olympic sequence. We can just export that live in our timeline. And I'm sure there's probably like a way better way to do this, but I just stick them in the autorated Mixamo joint structure, Like, there's no sense in, like, making a custom rig, because this is only for one shot. Like, I just need this to look awesome right now, and that's it. I'm sure if I was handing this over to other artists, or if this popped up in a bunch of other scenes, I build in controls and stuff like that, but it's like, I got already storyboarded the short. I knew the constraints of the shot and what I needed to create. So it was really just as easy of being like, hey, this head joint moves. We can turn this on real quick. This head joint moves, so I would like to take the positional coordinates of that and apply that to all of my other assets that I've created independently so that I can build out my character. So head walks up, Olympic sequence triggers, it disappears out of existence. I don't know, the eyeball, I guess maybe I had the eyeballs on for some reason, but Anyway, we'll roll with it. So the magic frame is frame 167, it looks like. So that's the last frame that our limbic sequence is in view. And so what we're going to do here is like a little bit of sleight of hand. So we're going to go from our limbic sequence of the character talking to the super awesome and detailed mechanical Westworld reveal face thing that we spent this whole time creating. So I already have it in the scene. And let's find it. And it's hanging out down here. And all right, its texture is snapped. And it's got like some absurd anchor point over there for some reason, but we'll just throw in a fresh one. It's at world 0. We'll bring it up. And yeah, we kind of want to just line this up, as close as we can. This will be, in render, I think you're going to be like, oh, it has to be like exact. But no one's going to be expecting it, and it's kind of like a sleight of hand right in front of your face. So like, those are the ones that you never catch. So we'll just kind of like go over in our elevation view on the side. We'll just kind of get it close enough. Boom, boom, boom. It's pretty good there. And then we will slide this guy here. And there's going to be, there's motion blur on the shot. The head kind of like kicks back to like initiate the move of it opening. So like that's a great point where it like kind of cuts at the peak of velocity. So like if you do like a handoff from left to right, magicians do it all the time. You never catch it when it's in motion. So let's go over to our object view right here. Let's take our wacky face stuff that we created. Let's go into let's keyframe the viewport visibility. So let's turn it off right now because this is frame 167. This is the last frame that our limbic sequence is in view. We'll set a keyframe. We'll click G to go forward. Got these spooky eyeballs. We'll make it turn back on. And you never know it changed. So if we go back and preview our animation, and we go back through the lens of the camera, character walks up. So it's a few lines of VO through the helmet. Helmet opens up. This is our limbic sequence. It's already cached out. And then all that geo just changed right before your eyes. You had no idea. And then we go into like our super crazy little animation that we just created. Yeah, so that's pretty much the shot. We can go ahead and take another look at it. Kind of in render. Like it always kind of looks cool in the viewport, and then you see it with all the lights, camera, and the action and stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, it's just a bunch of small little things kind of coming together, and yeah, you'd have no idea that it changed right there. All right, this looks like a little bit of time left. I think I hopped over something here, so I can hop back here. So when we were animating the face, you might notice that these panels look like impossibly thin, right? And it's like, it's a cool design, but like, this thing is supposed to exist in the real world, and real world things have thickness. So you're thinking maybe I should have changed this asset before I went into animation, but now it's too late. So let's just bring in a thicken modifier. We'll hit Shift C and type thicken, and then yeah, we can just take our whole geometry. Oh my God, it's terrifying. What have we done? We can just change our thickness, make it something that's not absolutely insane. So yeah, so we got some thickness on our face panels now. That's going to be great when we render it. We can even one thing to note is like we want these to like lock up like super flush, right? And if we have some thickness on it, you might have some like janky geo going on. So like let's just go ahead and shift our position inward. So any extrusion that happens is going to happen inward. And maybe you're thinking, you're like, well, we've already animated it. Like you're going to throw it in another generator. It's going to just mess all that up. But all of our animation plays super smooth. It might even play faster. I don't know. It's 24 release is wild. And then a great little added perk now that we have it in the thicken generator is that they have these like live selection tags, which are pretty great. So we'll just hit shell over here, and see how it just makes like a little selection tag for us. Let's grab a material. This gold material should work just dandy. We'll grab that little guy in there. And we'll grab this guy up. Bam! We got a nice little gold edge. It's like a little nuanced effect, but you know, when you're rendering, it'll like kind of catch the light, and it's just like a nice little extra. And yeah, you can see that in the final design here. There's like a nice little gold edge and detailing and stuff like that. So if we're just going to quickly do like a little recap. Scroll all the way to the bottom. And then we open up our final shot. So the character was created in ZBrush. And I'm no like optimization wizard or anything like that. So you can imagine that the polyflow was horrendous. But I dropped it into Mixamo and got a nice little auto rig out of it. Used a little bit of mocap with some hand keyframe stuff on top. All the clothing was created in Marvelous Designer and then brought in as an Alembic sequence that I could offset with the rest of my animation. The head talking was in audio to face, which I just showed you all. And then all of the other, you know, super cool kind of head break apart sci-fi effects were all created live here today. All right, guys, I think that's my time. Thanks so much for coming and listening to me click around on a computer today. It's been awesome. There we go. That's my social stuff. If you want to follow more of my work, you can hit me up on Instagram or Behance. You can also reach out through my website if you have questions about any of my work or just want to nerd out on some 3D stuff. Also, I'll be here today if you just want to say hello in person. That's cool, too. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Great job, Harrison. We do have some time for some questions, so if you have any questions, now would be the time. Right here, sir. So the question is, how long was the process on the personal project?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the process for the whole short was like 8 months. But like I wasn't like, you know, it was like a personal job, so I didn't get paid for it. So I just kind of broke that up when I had time for it. Definitely, you know, like some mornings I'd hop in there and be like, I'm going to goof around for like an hour on this thing and like see where I can get it. And then some days I'd be fortunate enough to jam on it all day. And then some weeks would go by where I'm just like, I'm swamped with client work and I just can't find the time. But 8 months.
On and off.
On and off, yeah, end to end.
Awesome. Any other questions? Question over here, Bonnie. So the question was fur.
Oh, man.
With the fur.
Oh, on the horse?
On the deer.
Oh, yeah. So that was all with Cinema 4D's hair tools. Yeah, so like I just had a whole bunch of different like hair things in there. So I had like one for the base fur, which was much smaller and like like I don't even know if I think I maybe only had a couple subdivisions on that with like some simple like wind dynamics. And then like for like, you know, the longer hair on the deer, like that was probably like a higher end simulation. But it was just a bunch of different little hair objects that were kind of groomed together and then simulated.
Awesome. Yeah, I really like that shot. The deer shot was great.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that's another super weird. If you like this strange existential short film, I got a couple others online that feel free to check out.
Check out his stuff. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, stay tuned. We're going to be taking a quick break, and we'll be back with Maria Good-Johnson. So stay tuned.